Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me at the first story on this marathon, not to feature the Doctor at all. Confession. It's only relatively recently that I have counted this as a story in its own right. Whenever I've watched through Doctor Who before, this has always kind of just been part one of the Daleks' master plan. Or if I watched the Daleks' master plan in isolation, I've just stuck this at the beginning. You know, it's a prologue, a foreword, an extra episode on top of 12. But given where this falls in the order of Doctor Who episodes, it sits between Galaxy 4 and the Mythmakers, and the fact that the Mythmakers sits between this and the Daleks' master plan kind of means that when it comes to chronicling a marathon, you have to consider this an entity in its own right. Now, I've never done that before. I've watched Doctor Who from the very beginning, but just for me, so it doesn't really matter. Obviously, I would watch it in order. I never take it out of place. It's always in sequence. But the first time that I chronicled a marathon was the last one I did, and I did it on Gallifrey base. And while I finished that marathon, I stopped chronicling it at David Tennant because, another confession, Gallifrey base started to become quite tedious, and so I stepped away. This time, obviously doing this marathon on YouTube again, this has to have its own entry. There's a daddy long legs. But even though it sits in this very specific place in season 3, and I'm never going to mess with the order, I would never go from Galaxy 4 to the Mythmakers to Mission to the Unknown to the Daleks Master Plan. I would never do that. But I can never really consider this a story in its own right. It feels odd to give it over an entry to this. And so I guess I've got my own sort of there's conventions of Doctor Who that I'm quite happy to bend because of personal preference. So spoiler alert for much further into the marathon, I have no qualms about using and I'm my preferred episode title of new series two-parters to describe the whole story, rather than going for that really ugly and cumbersome / thing and counting both. So for example, the Parting of the Ways I used to count Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. I know, should I stop being a Doctor Who fan? Maybe, but I have no qualms about doing that. Equally, I have no qualms about considering and I will be counting it as such on this marathon, the Trial of the Time Lord, as 4 stories rather than just 1. So if I don't mind doing that, and I don't mind doing that on marathons, because, brace yourselves, I am that's gonna annoy people that go for the multi-title new series two-parters. Ain't gonna happen on this. And the Trial of the Time Lord will be The Mysterious Planet, Mind Warp, Terror of the Vervoids, and The Ultimate Foe. It won't just be one entry. So why do I feel like I should go back on my own personal convention here and give over an entry to the Mission to the Unknown by itself? And I think the answer's obvious. It's basically to do with watching Doctor Who in consecutive order, which is, after all, the whole point of doing a marathon. Whether or not the Trial of a Time Lord is 1 story or 4, the episodes still get watched in order from start to finish. So with Mission to the Unknown, it's got to come in its right place, otherwise what is the point? So here is Mission to the Unknown, a single episode story from a time in the show where said episodes were roughly 24 minutes in length. So forgive me if this is brief. Which brings me on to my second confession, or third if you think it was a bombshell when I said that I count the Parting of the Ways to mean Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. Either way, another confession. I actually watched this one twice. Since the last time I did a marathon, this episode has been remade and lovingly recreated by Andrew Ireland and the very talented team at the University of Central Lancashire. So this marathon afforded me the opportunity for the first time to watch that remake, which I did directly before I then watched the trusty old reconstruction. With Galaxy 4 being animated and this episode having been remade, Season 3, which once upon a time would have begun with 10 reconstructions back to back, now has the option of its first 5 episodes being moving pictures. I mean, this truly is the future. Now, obviously, this depends on how strident you are when it comes to how authentic you like your Doctor Who marathons. Now, as I implied in my Galaxy 4 video, the animation feels less like the real Galaxy 4 than the reconstruction does. And the same is obviously true here, because with the remake of Mission to the Unknown, it's not the same actors giving the performances. But that's not to denigrate the University of Central Lancashire project, not at all, because it is truly, truly impressive. And watching it back to back with the reconstruction makes for a really interesting experience. And to be honest with you, I was delighted by how almost real it felt. I don't think I could ever bring myself to include it in future marathons at the exclusion of the reconstruction, but I see going forward absolutely no reason why I can't include both. But even without this new version of the episode and the various other ways we can experience this one-part story, there's still quite a lot to say about it. The principal one being the absence of the main cast. Now, how many people tuning in were waiting for the Doctor, Vicky and Stephen to show up, I wonder? I mean, obviously not people that would read cast lists in TV listings ahead of time, I suppose, but you know, even then Hartnell's credited in it. So I think what I'm trying to say, one of the luxuries we have about watching Mission to the Unknown these days is that we know the Doctor, Stephen and Vicky aren't going to show up, but I wonder if not knowing that gave viewers an unfavourable impression of this story. Doctor Who isn't even in it. What is in it though are Daleks, and they offer a link to the programme as we know it, and they are immediately better than they were in their most recent appearance in The Chase. There's no coughing, there's no stammering, there's no struggling with simple arithmetic. They're just back to trying to take over the universe, and therefore they are back to being a credible threat again. The Alliance is brilliantly realised too. I mean, so many aliens together. When the show has depicted alien races before, it's usually one at a time or humanoid, with the exception of the Web Planet, which I'm sorry to say I can't consider a success in that regard. Here though, there's lots of different species and they are successful creations. The idea of this alliance and it having such a varied depiction really helps expand the programme's universe. It's good world building on that level, but also because this is the first time we're seeing it for ourselves rather than through the eyes of the Doctor and his companions. We've lost our tour guide to the universe in this episode, and so it kind of feels a little bit like we've thrillingly wandered off to go exploring on our own and just instantly run into the Daleks. And so the absence of the Doctor to help out kind of just increases the threat and the menace of the Daleks. Usually he's around to stop them, and he will be later on, but the fact that, you know, we see that they carry on in his absence when he's nowhere to be found or anywhere nearby kind of only adds to their status as Doctor Who's most enduring monster. As does the reference to their invasion of Earth 1,000 years ago, which is obviously a seismic event that is very cleverly not being ignored. And when you couple that with Vicky knowing what Daleks are from history books, which she says as much in the Space Museum, it's all the world of Doctor Who is starting to coalesce and form a continuity. The Varga plants are a horrible creation and they make for some really squirmy body horror, especially when Garvey and Lowry start to succumb to them. And in fact, it's actually so heightened the threat that when Corey puts Lowry down towards the end of the episode, it does feel like a mercy. It's Saturday tea time in 1965 and you've got the hero killing his mate. Like it's bleak, this. But that also seems to be the point. You know, without the Doctor around, it's hopeless and none of the heroes survive. And even though it isn't to be followed up in the next episode, it does have a cracking cliffhanger. We know that the Doctor and Company are going to show up and become embroiled in all of this mess. Otherwise, why show it to us? But yeah, maybe we're going to be a little bit surprised about where we find ourselves next week. 86 episodes in now, and Doctor Who does something completely different once again. It offers up a prelude between stories to one that's coming in a few weeks' time. It might be in its third season, but it is still pushing its boundaries. It's the Varga plants. The fact that they can make a mercy killing feel germane and warranted in a family tea time TV show shows you how just they're horrible. It seems silly, especially as it could be considered one of its strengths, but its standalone positioning makes for an odd feeling when it comes to rating it. As good as it is, and it is really very, very good, I'd never feel like I could award it the full 5 because it's so far removed from the rest of the story that it's telling. So, you know, daft, I know. Which means out of 5. And even though it is only one episode, it is a notable one in that it is the final one to carry with it a producer credit for Verity Lambert, the woman who was so instrumental in shaping Doctor Who into what we know and love. Bye bye Verity, thank you so much. You go out with a surprise just as you came in with one, you pissy, vinegar-filled legend. That'll sound rude to some people who don't understand the context, but trust me, it's meant with a heck of a lot of love. And what do you think of Mission to the Unknown? Is it just a prologue to a greater story to come, and therefore fairly inconsequential, or do you consider it a story in its own right? Is it a successful experiment for Doctor Who, or do you sorely miss the Doctor, or is it his absence that makes it for you? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for some Doctor Who horseplay. And on that, as I record this video, there is a rumour floating around, based on I think listings on BritBox, that maybe episodes 2 and 4 of the Mythmakers could soon be with us. I always take missing episode rumours with a slight pinch of salt. If they have come back, oh my god, great, because spoiler alert for the next video, I love the Mythmakers. I just wanted to chronicle the fact that at this moment in time there are whisperings of maybe 2 episodes of the Mythmakers coming back, so fingers crossed. But if you don't want to miss my review of the Mythmakers, then you know how YouTube works. Please give it a like, spread the word so more people find the marathon, hit the subscribe button, clang that cloister bell, and I will see you in Troy.